Yeah, how Magnum is inspiring a new kind of pleasure seeking. We are joined by two very special people, a dream duo. It was actually so awesome to speak to you guys before this, to just hear, but I'll give you guys a space to do that. Maybe perhaps we just start off with some quick intros, and I'll give you a bit of a scene setting as well. Tugse, if you could start.
Yeah, sure. I'm Tugse. I'm the global brand director for the Magnum ice cream. And I have been actually on the brand for quite some time, 8 years now. I have a problem leaving. So it's nice. There's too many good stuff to try still. And I'm responsible for everything from like product innovation to communications, activations, and Magnum is like one of the most central brands of Unilever. So it's quite fun in terms of like working with also more than 50 countries as well. But that's what I do.
Amazing.
I'm KJ. I'm head of consumer brand at Golin, so a PR agency that really thinks sort of channel agnostic, really about creative and sort of culture first comms. So we've worked with Magnum for. This changes every time I say it. I think it's plus 20 years.
Before us, for sure.
Definitely before us. And me and Tugse have worked together for around 4.5 years.
And they speak every single week and have done for the last 4.5 years, which is, they're able to finish each other's sentences. It's quite remarkable, actually. Got a couple of notes and a couple of questions which will keep us in a really interesting pace. We just aligned on these yesterday, and gosh, you guys are in for a treat. It's going to be amazing, amazing talk. So Magnum, bit of context, nearly 40 years old. An iconic category-defining brand known for pleasure. Selling over 1 billion Magnums every single year. That's a huge scale. Just think about that for a second. But this summer is rewriting the rules. They are evolving for a dynamic new audience. They're leaning into creators, culture, and Charlie XCX. Social first. Why was right now the right time, the right moment to go all in on social first?
So I think we did go all in this year, but I don't think this is the first time for us. It's been a journey. We have been evolving a lot in the previous years as well. It's been like 5 years, around 5 years, that we built our own in-house community team. We have been really focused on like building a community together with the fans and listening to them much more. And that gave us the opportunity to be socially first, because it actually starts with the insights. We always have this conversation within the company. What does social first mean? Is it just the campaign, end results, etc.? So for me, it starts with the insights. We now have the biggest biggest community in the ice cream brands. We have like around 1 million followers on Instagram only, many more on TikTok, and this took years to build. And this took a lot of consistency, a lot of risk-taking. And as a result of that, we got to understand what do they really want and how can we really innovate in social. And I think this year, what we have done with Charlie is a bit of a cherry on top. So I think KJ can say a bit.
Yeah, and I think also it's not just necessarily about just shifting spend into social. I think some of the things that we talk about a lot between, Golin and Magnum is really about how we earn that conversation. And I think back to when I started my career, where you earned that conversation was print, online, and broadcast. That was about it. You had one shot at it, and that was, that you had to get that coverage. But actually now the places where you can earn conversation, they are never ending. We have got millions of people with social media accounts who are not only consuming news, but they are also then going back to social to form their own opinions, to share their own opinions, and then to craft and create on social as well. So we all of a sudden have this whole new community of storytellers that we need to be really, really aware of. And with our other agency partners, we feel that we do quite a good job of staying true to an earned discipline. I think the other thing to mention is that, headlines, or those traditional coverage that we used to call it, headlines are still really important from a credibility point of view. And so we don't discard headlines, especially for local markets like Germany, where traditional media is still really important. But actually, we've got so many more opportunities about where we can drive that conversation. And then we also really think about how we design for social. So we make sure that we have very, very strong interagency relationships where the core campaign that we are designing can flex into lots of different channels, lots of different disciplines. But the thing that roots it all is really an earned mindset. And I think that's what all of our agency partners and our brand team as well are really, really on board with.
We've got space to unpack some of this, and I'm really keen to get into cracking into the culture, Charlie XCX, creators. There's a lot of nuances within that I really want to unpack. But just before we do, you touched on earned and that kind of mindset. When going into a social first approach and going more heavy into that, what were the measures of success? Are we looking at impressions, engagements? Are you looking at sales? What are the things that you're looking at?
I think measurement, when we talk about earned, is always a tricky one. I think that when we historically have looked at the impact of earned, it's been really difficult to pinpoint that, much to the industry and my own frustration. One thing that we at Golin, and also a lot of our clients, we don't look at the vanity metrics of reach, of impressions. Of course, they play a role, but that's not the whole story. What we talk about is what's the business impact that we need to drive. I mean, Unilever is an FMCG brand, and we need to have bottom line impact. So we also really think about measurement in terms of where you are against your competitor set as well, because it's all well and good saying, I've got you 2,000 pieces of coverage and a 42 billion reach because we've got you on the Mail Online. And actually, that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. So what we really need to do is look at who are our competitors, who are on the shelves of Sainsbury's, of Carrefour, and how are we comparing, whether it comes to affinity, whether it comes to awareness, whatever those metrics are right for us as a brand and where we currently sit in the market, that's what we look at. I think the days of, just reporting those big numbers, those big vanity metrics, they just won't do it anymore. So we spend a huge amount of time on measurement. We're actually in measurement for stage 1 of our CAN, or our Magnum times Charlie XCX campaign. And that takes a huge amount of time and investment about how we report that back to the business. And I think it's only because we have such strong measurement that we can then go back to the business and say, look, this part of the campaign worked, this part of the campaign didn't. And that's what I'm really grateful to Tugse and to everyone at Ice Cream or Unilever Ice Cream for, is that ability to test and learn. But you've got to have the data, and you've got to have really deep data there to be able to help you to double down in the areas that are working to drive that return on investment.
And I think comparison is quite important, because we don't only compare ourselves with ourselves, We always have this thing like, we are better than next year, we're 3 times better, 5 times better, but also the context changes, the landscape changes as well. And it depends on where we are. So, for example, when we go to Cannes Film Festival, we compare ourselves with like the Chopard and Bulgari and like all these brands. And it might sound like nonsense, like you're an ice cream brand, why are you doing that? But that's the space we take, and that's where people had a split between these brands. So then if that is the case, we look at our share of voice there as well. So I think it's a little bit dynamic, case by case, as KJ says. And I think there's a lot of testing and learning on measurement as well. And we also make sure that we don't only invest in things that are like guaranteed with measurement, but we always have a pot of money to also put on things that we can test, because it might mean that actually next year it's the big thing as well. So it's part of our learning process.
I love that. I touched on this because it might give a lens at which we can look at the conversation around cracking into culture, leading into Charlie XCX. You had mentioned affinity, awareness. The campaign was crack into pleasure. Am I saying that right? Those words just ring true. Like hearing the word crack as well, you can kind of hear it in it itself. A big part of this new audience, Gen Z, perhaps we can touch on that as well. Why was Charlie XCX a big part on choosing that? Why did you guys choose Charlie XCX?
I mean, she's iconic, as is Magnum, but I wish I could say it was just that. It wasn't. It was months and months of data mining, of analytics. I think it's probably worth saying as well, I know Tugse will talk about this a little bit more. We've had a relationship with her for a while now, actually. And when we first started our conversations with her, it was pre-Brat. So she was nowhere near as big as we would have needed for a global campaign. But we did know there was something that she had that we needed for this brand as well. So actually, we invited her along to our activation last year at Cannes. And I would say that her assets outperformed absolutely everything else. So that instantly gave us the confidence to be like, okay, she's on her way. And then we were able to really double down on that partnership and make her our sort of hero ambassador for the year and for our big master brand moment at Cannes. I think, nobody needs to, there's no point me sitting here saying why she's culturally relevant. Like, we all know that. I think what's interesting about her is she's not just a talent. You're not just badging a talent. Her and her team, I would say, are pretty genius when it comes to marketing. Like, we forget that Brat was the launch of a commercial product, which was an album. And it was, one of the best-selling albums that she's ever had. And that was her team that really started to think about the creative, the social strategy that needed to sit around all of that. So the partnership between her also hinged a lot on her willingness and our willingness to be collaborative. So historically, and with other brands that I've worked with, this is what you're going to say, this is what you're going to do. There's very little creative control that sits with the talent. And we didn't want to do that because ultimately one of the things that I know Tugse feels incredibly passionate about is if we are going to turn up in an artist's world or in a talent's world or in a creator's world, we have to relinquish a little bit of control around our brand. And so working with her and her team, we felt confident in doing that. And we felt she was going to be a good partner, and she is being a good partner. And
she loves Magnum. I think that's the critical thing. It's very hard to work with someone that doesn't love your brand.
You made a special Magnum for her, no?
We did. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. But also she wanted it, right? So I think coming back to the point that KJ said about actually having that creativity, the brain as well, not only the face, because obviously there were days we all went through it. For marketeers, 20 years ago, you pick a face, you give them a Magnum, and you take a picture. That era is over. The consumers, the fans, especially the younger generation, is so smart. Yeah. They immediately understand why is this person not eating, or why is this not person more engaged in the brand. So it's not a one-off thing for us. And as KJ said, she genuinely loved Magnum. There was a moment we had the conversation years ago where actually she was interested, and we started already flirting the year before she came to our Magnum party in Cannes. She loved it. She was just there to hang out a couple of hours. She stayed all night, went back, came in again, and we saw actually that our fans were talking about it, and they wanted it. And our fans are very vocal, so we listen to it all the time. And they actually wanted us to do more with her. Yeah. So we kind of listened to that instinct as well. And then everything else came, the Brat's Magnum, the XCX shake, the ideas from her fans. So once I think that love is unlocked, so much come out of it.
I think one thing that we had to make sure of when we go into, handing over some creative control, I know we're going to talk a little bit about how nerve-wracking that was for both of us. But you have to have a really strong strategy that you stick to. Yeah. Because, of course, the creative mind of Charlie XCX and her team, you can imagine the spaces that they could have gone to. But we worked on a comm strategy that completely overhauled our sort of master brand activity that we do at Cannes Film Festival. We spent months working on that. And there were some really dramatic changes that we needed to make, shifting from promoting our NPD into our core distinctive brand assets. Loads of different changes that we had to make. And so we had something that we kept coming back to. So even when her creative ideas were way up here, we could keep bringing them back to the strategy, knowing that it would deliver on our business objective. And that was really important to keep us on the straight line.
Why don't we give a bit of space to that? We can jump straight to that challenge. I touched on how Magnum's been around for over 40 years, got a very strong brand identity. But you didn't only just work with Charlie XCX, you worked with 300 plus creators. Is that the right?
Yeah, true.
Have you worked at that scale with influencers before? Or is this the first time that you've worked with influencers at that scale?
So again, it's an evolution.
Yeah.
It wasn't 0 to 300 all of a sudden. But I think there is an evolution of Cannes. So Cannes Film Festival, for those who doesn't know, we've been there for 13 years. So basically, this is, where a lot of brands go to actually make a statement, sponsor or non-sponsor. But Magnum has been there to actually launch the big news, the new products, and announce the talent partnerships and so on. And actually, it started very much like more traditional. We would have everything around one big celebrity. So Bella Hadid walks into the Magnum Beach, all the cameras are there, but it's exclusive. It's behind the screen. No one can approach.
How long ago was that? Was that about 10 years ago?
This was actually
8 years ago?
Which year are we? 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was 8 years ago. Like it was like that, and we took pride in it. And the people loved it, that it's exclusive. I cannot touch it, but it's aspiring. That changed a lot. Now people want accessible things, like they want a piece of the experience. So we had a evolution, like working with like a 100-year-old fashion icon, creating fashion merchandise, into starting to work with actually music artists, because they actually have a lot to say, and the songs are a shared thing with their fans, and you can be part of it. And then we also started going into even like, working with someone that got famous on TikTok. Was Jake, at the time, was our star. And then we started going into getting talent that are like more specific. We worked with Peggy Goo before she was actually that famous. And now actually coming into Charlie XCX, it was not only about her. She has a social circle. She has friends. She has fan accounts. She has people that actually want to come from around the world, content creators that are big fan of her. So it was all connected. So it wasn't isolated. Everything is about Charlie. It's Charlie, her social circle, and the content creators. So when you design that space, what happens is, yes, of course, you need to bring a certain number of people there because you want to have a base. But then also you have the pull, like people want to come. So we got like requests from around the world, from different content creators, or people that are in Cannes Film Festival for other brand partnerships. They were like, can we actually come to this party? And for any of you
Sounds very organic.
Was there, yeah, it was like, the queue was crazy, literally. I'm pregnant and I'm being pushed around, like even Charlie cannot get in, her friends are in the back. So it was like, it's kind of ridiculous, but the reason is because you have a foundation and there is something valuable for these content creators there. And through that, it gets contagious, because then they share and then fans want a piece of it. And thus, we launched the Bratz Magnum XCX shake that is available in other countries, so that the fans can have this experience. And we had one day open to public on the beach. There was a huge queue, like in 3 hours, we had like around 1,000 people visiting. And that's, I think, all like a chain, that it's no longer about one person. It's no longer about exclusivity. It's about accessibility and creating that experience. And I think content creators love it as well.
I think it's probably worth saying that out of those 300 creators that we had there, only 75 of them we were working with on a paid basis. So when we talk about that sort of virality and that pull into the experiences that we put on over this master brand activation over a 3-day period at Cannes Film Festival, the pull of what we do with Charlie, with her, her circle of influence, means that we are getting a huge return on investment for influencers who just want to be there, who want to be creating content. And we also have creators that come back year after year. So we have a space that is designed for creators. Every single wall that you look on, it's a huge experiential space. I'm sure you've all been to Lions. It's on La Croisette. And every space within that brand experience is built for influencers. It's built for creators. It's built for social. You can't take a picture in there without having Magnum branding somewhere in the back. So we think about it all the way through, sort of end to end, about how we are creating something that is not for a TVC shoot. It's not for an out-of-home shoot. It's for creators, and you have to give them that respect because they are such a huge part of the marketing mix now.
Sounds like there's a lot of things that she brought. If you were to, so we touched on like cultural relevance, we touched on like a real pull, bringing multiple creators to the table as well. Gen Z, what would you say is the biggest thing that Charlie XCX unlocked for you guys?
I would say true fandom. Because it's different telling your story from your brand point of view. We had a campaign that is nothing cracks like Magnum. And we can talk about it later a bit, how this came. But it was all about what makes Magnum Magnum. We had the films, etc. It works great, tests great. We put it on TV, digital, everywhere.
I love this answer, by the way.
Got
more questions coming. Yeah.
I can imagine. But so in the end, it's our storytelling. It's Magnum talking. People want to hear other people talk about you. And I think it's much more much more special. So
Yeah.
what Charlie gives access to us is, first of all, her tone of voice, her fandom, telling her fans that actually I love Magnum, guys, this is one of us, it's okay. And giving access to that, but also giving access to her creative remits as well, her creative brain to plan something. Like her walking into the Magnum beach with a Magnum in her hand at night together with her friends, and with like referral to the very iconic 1994 Vivienne Westwood show, because everyone in that show was eating a Magnum, including Kate Moss. That is like quite genius. Obviously, it was co-created with Golin, which is amazing. But she was like also doing the styling of it. Like she wanted to do that. So like getting access to that creative brain, getting access to that fandom, getting access to her storytelling is much more valuable, I think, than putting that money on TV.
And I think we're lucky as an agency that we work with a brand who is willing to give that creative freedom, because it's not always the case. So yeah, I thank you for that.
Fandom, love that word. Bit of context for those in the room. I'm from ThisThat. We measure brand, and we've got a belief that brand is interchangeable with the word community. And if you're looking to grow your brand, you're looking to grow community, and that is best done by champions who, like you said, fandom. But when you look into the fandom, people could be championing you in the wrong way as well, and that misfit and that misalignment has a detrimental impact to the company. It sounds like that was not the case with Charli XCX. It sounds like it's the right kind of play. And that is something that can be difficult to balance, especially when you're looking at an established brand like yours. How much creative freedom can you give versus how much do you pull back to have that alignment? And what processes do you bring into place? Because you're operating this at a huge scale. I'd love to hear more about that.
You kind of gave the answer to the question by selecting the right fandom, because obviously we don't go around like everyone is free to do everything that they want, but things that we want to amplify, we don't go around just giving everyone the access and freedom. I think it's very important, actually. We have our community agency here as well, Chloe there. So we built that community in the last 5 years. And the best access this community gave to us is fandom and passion points. We were very vocal about passion points. Like we are actually more interested in fashion, art, music, film, food, obviously. But then we discovered fandoms like K-pop. Like our like actually demographic is like lots of like almost 50% K-pop stars, and it's because like one K-pop star Jimin years ago posted something about a Magnum and everyone like came in. So we have like Formula One fans, like Formula One themselves tagged us, and like we sent them Magnums years ago. They posted organically, so we keep like understanding who are the relevant fandoms. We learn, and through that, I think what Golin does very well is actually to identify what are these fandoms and who are these representative people that these fans love, so we could go. And once they give that recommendation to us, then I feel very comfortable giving the creative freedom, because it's not about giving them a rigid brief. It's about actually, yes, we have shared values, we have shared passion points, our fans seem to be a good match. Then actually it's where I feel much more comfortable giving that freedom. And of course it's risky and it's always, you're scared, but it's rewarding. I think it's very rewarding, right?
I think it's choosing where to be flexible and where to be more rigid as well.
You don't need to be in every conversation as well.
I think one of the things, as Tugse mentioned, the guys at BTG, do an incredible job at feeding insights into us, and that's why I think that interagency teams that are truly collaborative and get on and are all driving towards the same goal that is set out by these incredible marketers is really, really important. And then we can take insights that are coming through on social, we can weave that into the comms plan or the strategy that we're spelling out. And one of the things that we really started to notice was the intersectionality of passion points. Like, we're human beings. No one's like, I like fashion and that's all I like. Do you know what I mean? People like fashion, they like sport. You can like multiple things all at once. And so being able to play into all of those, but with a very, very linear red thread that comes all the way through it, which is your brand essence and your brand identity. And you've got to be really, really clear on what that is. So you don't, and we see brands do it all the time. It's like, cool, I'm going into gaming or I'm going over here. And it's like, and what they're missing often is that red thread that ties it all together, or that real sort of brand value in essence, that it's like, yeah, I can understand why you're there, or I can tell that's a Magnum activation, or that's a Magnum asset, or a Magnum piece of content. I think the other thing with creators especially is spending time investing in their understanding of the brand. Like a briefing document, if you're working with someone for the year, sending them a briefing document, doing a briefing call, not enough. You have to spend time with them. We have, our R&D centers, we have our head offices, we've got all the brand teams, we've got people who create all the various different flavors of Magnums, and they are the real guardians of this brand. I think it's incredible when you work with brands like Magnum. They are proper guardians of this brand, and so the creators also need to have that knowledge and have that understanding. So actually allowing them, doing proper onboardings, taking them to spaces and places where they can understand this is Magnum, that's not Magnum. And that's the other added benefit of what we do at Cannes Film Festival, is it acts as a master brand kickoff for the year. So they're like, oh, cool. So this is the levels. That's the tone. This is this is how we're doing things. And then that runs into local market. Then that runs into all their content that they're doing for the rest of the year. If you invest in time up front, actually, the results and the payoff of that is massive.
I think we also built friends during this process. So a lot of the content creators we have, maybe 20%, I might say, are like coming year on year as well. And they know the brand very well. And when you have this mix, like you have 300 people, but actually, like, I don't know, 30, 40 of them maybe are already people that know Magnum very well. That mix, as they socialize us, it's very important for us. Yeah. Like there were people in Cannes this year that like, they saw me pregnant first time, and now second time. Like I have pictures with them like 5 years in a row. So it's quite nice because they actually become your kind of guardians as well, as KJ said. Yeah. And then you have an issue as a brand, they're the first vocal people as well. And I think that is really important. Like one of the example I have is like the year we worked with Miley Cyrus, like a couple of years ago. We completely like were shocked because it was the COVID year, so no physical activation, and her fan accounts, like they all have like 30,000-40,000 followers, and like there are thousands of them. They basically were all posting stuff that like they were making artworks for Magnum, key visuals, like, and none of them are actually complying to the brand guidelines. Like you can freak out, like what's going on? They were doing polls on which product to launch, so completely out of control. There is no way, no technology to measure the content out there because it's not all tagged. It's not the AI area, etc. So through that, we also learned a lot. Actually, like it's not only about like giving the control to the content creators as we know, like it's also giving the control to the friends and to the fans of the brand. And I think that unlocks a huge thing for us.
This is, you use the word red thread, which I think is super helpful. I love the fact that you gave space to having the overlap with them, making sure that you don't just have a brief and a briefing call, that you actually spend time, because there's going to be a lot of nuances. You can do everything you want to have, like, these are the two associations you want to anchor, and we're going to use this master moment at Cannes to anchor these things. But they might interpret that slightly differently. Could you just, for the audience here, help spell out what that red thread actually looks like? You use words like brand identity, but in a brief, what is that? Is that anchor this association? Is it something like that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for this year, our common strategy is all around cracking into pleasure. So you will have seen it on Magnum TVCs and at home. And then we have pulled that through, the above the line is nothing cracks like a Magnum. And then below the line, we have crack into pleasure, which is an iteration of that, which works for those disciplines and for an earned mindset. And so that red thread took us a while to get to. We've actually never focused on the cracking chocolate of a Magnum before. It might sound like a bit of a mad thing to focus a whole comm strategy around, but we spent a long time looking at all of our distinctive brand assets. So the Magnum Brown, the distinctive cracking chocolate, the way that we make our ice cream, all of those things that are meant to be associated with Magnum. I mean, like, there's so many to pick from here. What do we need to double down on? And so we used, our data analytics team used AI to trawl supermarket reviews across the world. So when you trade down and you don't buy Magnum and you buy an own brand version that is arguably cheaper, that the thing that you miss is that crack into a Magnum. You will have heard the crack of a Magnum on every Magnum advert since its inception in 1986. But we never knew it had such power. And then all of a sudden we were like, oh, okay, that's it. And then everybody was able to, you know, our incredible creative agency Lola were like, yeah, that needs to, you know, needs to feed into the TVC. You know, we knew that actually there was a real emotional connection with this crack of a Magnum, just like, you know, the opening of a Coke can, and that then becomes our red thread. So obviously, you know, nothing cracks like a Magnum is a lovely line for TV. That doesn't work. It doesn't work for our communities. It doesn't work for, you know, our social audiences. And so we just have a slight iteration on that. But then everything is able to land off that. So everything is about the product. Everything is about our distinctive brand assets. And everything is about driving the sort of iconicity and also the willingness to pay more for a Magnum. That's the key bit here, is that, you know, we defined the category. There was no adult chocolate covered ice cream, luxury ice cream on a stick, before Magnum came along. But actually, to stay in that market leading position, you know, you have to really understand what people love about your brand, and then you have to really double down on it.
There's something here that's actually really smart, and it's not just the emotional resonance that you touched on there. Something that we've seen in our data is the thing that gets people to advocate actively, and he spoke about fandom, is to love that brand so much so that they actually are at a point of preferring them over others. And the way in which you got to that is you actually looked at the actions that they take and when they don't choose them. So you've not just looked at what's emotionally going to get them into funnel and get them to want to buy, but you've actually managed to, within that, also look at how do we get them, how do you like conquer for market share from other competitions? How do we get them to really love us, to champion us further? Take notes. This is brilliant. I love that. Really, really cool. Sorry.
It's somewhere in between the functional and emotional, because in the end, we do have a big KPI of worth, driving worth and getting people to pay more for a Magnum because it's more expensive. Like, we know it. We go to supermarket, there's something 50% of the price that looks same, but it's not.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite a lot of digging in, as KJ said, what makes it different. Because if you tell us and our R&D, there's a list of 10,000 things. If you ask the consumers, they see one thing that is more dominant.
Yeah.
And then that's the crack. And crack actually is the first bite into the pleasure.
Yeah.
The moment you close your eyes, it's different. So I think it's a territory for us that indeed it's not a one-off. Like, it's the start of something even longer.
What does pleasure mean? What does pleasure mean in 2025? What did it mean before?
So pleasure, I think in the essence, of course, I'm not a pleasure expert. no such claim. But of course, it's things that make you feel good. But it's different for everyone. Pleasure is very personal, but also it changes with times, right? So there was a moment also, if you see the background of Magnum 1989, like it actually started with pleasure, but like there was a moment of like more sexual pleasure, like a little bit luxurious pleasure. Pleasure is like going with a limousine, drinking the champagnes, having a great house.
Brat Summer.
Yeah, kind of. And then COVID happened, right? Like, it became actually connection, like connecting with people is the pleasure, like more meaningful things are pleasure. And today, actually, post-COVID, there is a lot of research that actually backs this up. It's experience. There's a big experience economy. People missed experiences, especially the younger generation. All of a sudden, the festivals are booming. The face-to-face everything is booming. And we see that actually what people want is not like, I want a promotion from Magnum, which gives me like a limousine. It's actually, I want an experience. I want to go to Primavera where Charlie XCX is headlining, and I want to try that green Magnum that no one else can because it's so limited. So I think there's something about the evolution of pleasure into experiences, and that reflects a lot to what we do as well.
And it's also not just about experiences that are rooted in product. So for the UK local market, as an example, we have something called the Magnum Pleasure Pass, which was based on a really single-minded insight of, you know, when times are tough, the first things to go in your, you know, your budget, personally, is, you know, your festival tickets, it's your gig tickets, it's your trip to the pub with your mates. So Pleasure Pass is it's a sort of local market iteration of everything that we do, cracking into pleasure, and Magnum gives you access to all of those things. So the very simple act of purchasing a Magnum in Sainsbury's, cracking into it and cracking into your pleasure, you can then get access to, now there's lots of different brands who have done that in many different iterations, but that is so rooted in our brand essence and what we want to provide to people. So then that meaningfulness is really there as well.
I'm loving this. How are we for time? Just checking. Yeah. I've got a couple more questions. Yeah. We touched on evolution just there. And we spoke about brand identity, brand universe. Pleasure means something different today than what it did maybe when Magnum first started. And then there's this red thread that you take your customers and your audience through. And you spoke about Cannes as this master point to signal this is what the brand is for this year. How are you guiding the audience now and this new audience through this evolution of what pleasure is?
I think there are things that don't change, and we also look at like what are that like universal continuous things, but also what are the things that evolve as well. And from a Magnum point of view, you probably see like I sometimes do it like I put from 1989 to today, like all the ads we do, like everything we do. I think there are certain commonalities like thick cracking chocolate, like that's a must-have for a chocolate-covered ice cream brand. So it gives pleasure. That doesn't change, and it's very important. It sounds simple, but like we are in the midst of a massive cocoa inflation. Like the crops are not super good, etc. There is an increase in the cost, and a lot of players are actually cutting down on it. And they also have a way to, I think, hide it so the consumers don't really get the exact difference, but they do understand when they experience that thick cracking chocolate. So it's, I think, putting your terms in terms of what you're not going to compensate, your brand principles. So it starts with that, like having the best quality chocolate ice cream. But then it goes into, I think, standing for pleasure, whatever it means to person, but also whatever it means to time. So maybe indeed, like years ago, we were like showing Jessica Alba jumping on a incredibly luxurious car where everyone was aspiring, and Bella Hadid walking into Cannes without anyone touching. And today we are actually doing pleasure pass, giving experiences, and then we are actually bringing Charlie XX and all her friends and all her fans into our party. So I think we are again thick cracking chocolate, pleasure. And then the role of earned in our for our brands is very important because we cannot just transfer that pleasure to people only with like one-way TVCs and so on. Even before social first, we were earned first as a brand. It was a big part of the DNA, and it's probably one of the most earned first brands in Unilever, but also in the FMCG sector. We try to create something more than ice cream, a lifestyle. You know, walking with a Magnum means something. Like it means I want to feel good. I'm doing something for me today. Yeah. So that feeling we are also sticking to. So there are a couple of things we stick to, but then we follow the times, follow the consumers, and we try to evolve ourselves. Like we are not rigid, like, you know, this is what it is. So that's what.
There's something I'm seeing in that maybe you can build on as well. So with that question, I almost opened up the field for you to say we change on this, we push them through this, but actually you answered with we don't change on this. Yeah. And when you were describing what that identity is, or what that red thread is, you spoke of above the line and below the line, but one thing didn't change, and it was the word crack. Yeah. And what's so amazing with that is you've distilled everything, all these activities to one word. I think there's a big lesson in just keeping things simple as well, which then gives space to everything.
And I think you have to be really single-minded. I mean, brands, you know, there's so many different pillars and facets to brands these days, but I think you have to be really single-minded about where you sit and what you stand for and what your value is. Yeah. And I think when you talk to someone when you work at Magnum, it's like you've got a big rosette saying, I work at Magnum. And, it's representative of... You've got badge on, haven't you? She's got Magnum badge on. But that's really important because, everybody who works on Magnum has such a single-minded focus on what that brand stands for and its role and what it means to people. And when you've got that really single-minded focus, I think you're then much more confident, actually, to allow people, creators, talent, whoever it might be, to come into your brand and play around with it in a way that is right for their audience. But if you don't have the red thread, if you don't have that sort of, the crack as a distinctive brand asset that pulls everything back, then it just becomes really disparate, really confusing, and really messy.
Yeah, I think it's. I also quite like to be flexible and agile. You need to be really clear.
Yeah, have a
of who you
background.
are,
Yeah. My final question was going to be, if there is one piece of advice you give to a brand that is evolving but wants to not lose their core identity, what they should do. Sounds like we've already answered that, but
I think I have, yeah. I think it is just being really clear, really single-minded on the brand, and then being really brave. And I think a lot of that bravery, has to. I don't envy Tugse's job on internal stakeholder management sometimes. I truly don't. But I think that often data and analytics and a really solid strategy can help you to be more brave, because it's like, hold on, we're going way too far over here. We need to bring it back again. So yeah, I would say single-mindedness and bravery. Because that's not very original, is it? I'm sure everyone said that, but
it's something that people overlook a lot. Keeping things simple is, there's that saying of, sorry, I don't have enough time to keep this short. And keeping things simple is hard. It's actually a lot more work to keep things simple, and I think you guys have done an amazing job. So I'm excited to see what rest is to come in the summer. Any questions on the floor?
Any questions from the audience? I think whilst people are thinking of a question, I was very kindly invited to go check out the Magnum space at Cannes Film, and it was absolutely incredible. You did an amazing job. Could you tell the audience, perhaps for some inspiration at home, the viral croissant Magnum thing?
Yes.
Just describe some of the things that you had there, because it was pretty cool. They had like a bakery. They were doing like custom Magnum recipe. Yeah, just explain some of that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So actually, we had the dipping bars for customizing Magnums for last 10 years, since the 2012. I'm really confused about years. 14 years now, apparently. And we have been doing that for a while. But actually, last year, something happened, croissant, in social media. And then we started putting Magnum in a croissant. And our CMO is French. He was like, gonna die. But fans loved it all over the world, from Dubai to Turkey to France to Asia. Like, people were putting, like in little cafes, Magnum in a croissant and selling it, and there were queues. So we kind of took it as a social first insight, and we decided to do the Magnum bakery, and we kind of expanded it. So we have the croissant Magnum, we have a bun Magnum, we have a macabon. I don't know if you tried. We have the bonbons now, the little bites. They're super nice with sauces, and we put it in macarons. And then we had the XTX shake, basically the famous Charlie XTX shake, the green one as well. And we opened it for the first time in Cannes. And it was like actually for a few days for the content creators, then open to public, which everyone really queued for in a rainy day, which was super cute and nice. And now we are taking it to countries. Actually, today I'm here. I chose to be here, but actually in Berlin, there's a pop-up opening. If anyone's going to Berlin this evening. So there will be the Magnum croissants there as well. And it will be all around the world in different countries. So fans will be able to have access to it in the Magnum standard, because they have been taking it from other places. So yeah, that's something that we are really passionate about. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, it was very, very cool to see. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Thank you. I was lucky enough to go to Cannes as well with Digital Voices. There's a lot of discussion in the industry at the moment about community events versus influencer events, and obviously earned content and community is a huge part of Magnum. Do you see a near future where the big Cannes activation will be kind of expanded to be a community event as well as primarily influencers?
A tricky one. Yeah, I think ultimately we have to evolve. We have to evolve year on year. I don't know any year that we have done this master brand activation where any of it stayed the same. Like everything has evolved year on year. Don't get me wrong, the logistics of having something that is, open to thousands of people from the community makes me itch a little. But I think that, there are absolutely ways forward with that. I think that we have to stay true to what that community needs. So as an example, there were fans and some community who were able to come to our activations, come to our brand experiences, nowhere near on the scale that it should be. I think that we need to start building that a whole experience much more for community. It might just happen in a slightly different way so that everyone has the right parameters and safety, I guess, as well.
We also say since COVID, my motto has been whatever happens in Cannes doesn't stay in Cannes. So maybe we cannot take everyone to Cannes, but how can we take it out to people? So that's why we'll be in festivals this summer. So anyone around Primavera, and for more, stay tuned. So we are trying to be in more places as well.
And also, I think it's about taking, we call it a master brand moment because, we are setting the tone as a global team, and then we are setting what local markets need to do as well. So I think how communities can tap into local market events, local market experiences, I think that is really exciting about what we could do there for sure.
Wicked. I mean, this was incredible. I feel like we learned a lot. That red thread, I think everyone should take that away. Simplicity is key.
Thank you so much for having us.
Give it up for Max, Katie, Joe, and Tugse. Thank you.